Today, we will be understanding different types of hosts. In the last lecture, we understood different types of parasites. So in this one, we'll be understanding host in parasitology. Because hosts are really important, and one of the important hosts is human. And let me complete this illustration. So I'm trying to create a human to just represent the host, right? And if we talk about the characteristic of host, the first point is it's a living organism, and inside that particular host you have parasites. Like these red lines, they are parasite. The host is going to harbor the parasite, right? And then what parasite is going to get from the host, and no benefit will be there. The first point is nutrition. It requires food for its survival. Second is shelter, because parasite also requires some sort of space. And then best environment. Inside the host, parasite get the best environment for its survival. In addition to that, it also causes a lot of harm to the host. Next, if we talk about types, let's talk about different types. First is definitive host. It's also known as final host. A definitive host, and it's also, as I told you, it's a final host. Another name for definitive host is final host. And in which what happens is parasite undergoes sexual maturity. So sexual maturity or sexual part of the life cycle is completed in this particular host. So sexual maturity, or I can write down sexual reproduction also, right? So sexual reproduction is completed in this particular host. Now we talk about the example. Let's take the example of one of the most important parasite, which is Plasmodium. Plasmodium, which causes malaria, one of the deadliest infection, parasitic infection. In this case, humans, they are not the definitive host. You need to understand that. In this case, what we have is mosquito, Anopheles mosquito, because many people do this mistake all the time. That's why I've written, humans first. But it's the mosquito, which is the definitive host in this case. The sexual reproduction happens in Anopheles mosquito. Second one is Taenia solium. Taenia solium. For Taenia solium, humans are the definitive host, where it completes its sexual reproduction. Next, let's talk about second one, a really, really important one, which is intermediate host. Intermediate host. Obviously, and the second part of the life cycle will be completed in this one. So parasite will complete larval, let me write it down, larval stage or larval development. And this is also the part where asexual reproduction of the life cycle happens. So asexual reproduction, if completed in this particular host, it will be called as intermediate host, right? So obviously now if we talk about, let's say, let me write it down, life cycle. So part of the life cycle, which is asexual reproduction, will be completed in this one. If we talk about the example, let's talk about again the example of Plasmodium. So I hope now you can imagine humans are going to be the intermediate host, because they will be completing their asexual reproduction in humans. Now, next one is Fasciola hepatica. It's also known as a liver fluke. And for that, snail is the intermediate host, right? Now, in intermediate host, you also have a concept of multiple intermediate hosts. So parasite can also survive in, let's say, intermediate host 1, then intermediate host 2. So let me write it down, multiple intermediate hosts, in which one you can have first intermediate host. So for example, this is first IH means intermediate host, and where what will happen that early larval development phase will be completed. Early larval development will happen in intermediate host 1, and the late larval development will happen in second intermediate host. So second intermediate host, you will have late larval development, right? Late larval stages will be completed in this particular host. If we talk about the example, example in this case, I don't know if you have heard about Diphyllobothrium latum. Let me write it down. Diphyllobothrium latum is the parasite, where you have two intermediate hosts. The first one is the cyclops. The second one is freshwater fish. So it basically completes life cycle, the part of asexual reproduction in two different individual hosts, right? Now let's move on to the another host type, which is the reservoir host, So let me write it down. Point number 4 right over here is the reservoir host, and I think it's very, very easy to understand. So reservoir host will be the host that will harbor the parasite without causing any kind of disease. No significant disease will be caused by this. So no disease will be there in the host because of the parasite. It will act as a permanent source of infection. So it will be the source of infection, permanent source of infection, but there will be no infection in the host. Example, if we take the example, before that, let me write it down that it will be the permanent source of infection. Let's talk about the example. Dogs are a reservoir host in case of Echinococcus granulosus. There are no symptoms, no disease caused by this in dogs. So they become reservoir hosts. Second one is rodents. And rodents are intermediate hosts for Leishmania. Very, very dangerous parasite, Leishmania. Right? Okay, now let's talk about another type of host, which is the 5th point here, Paratenic host. Paratenic, it's also known as transport host. Okay, so point number 1, let me write it down. Transport host means the parasite remains alive and infective but does not undergo any development. So parasite basically will be alive, right? But there will be no further development. So next point is no development will be there in this particular host. It is not essential for the life cycle, but it helps in bridging the ecological gap. Now, example is freshwater prawn for one of the most important parasite, which is Angiostrongylis cantonensis. That's the parasite where prawn is the paratenic host. Now let's talk about another host. We'll move on to the next slide now let's move on to the next host also, which is amplifier host. So let me write it down. Amplifier host. Often it's going to multiply. So it will be the parasite which will multiply rapidly so that the amplification of the parasite will happen. So that's why it's known as amplifying host. So high level of parasites are going to get accumulated in this particular parasite. And that is why they are really, really essential and essential for potential for transmission to vectors. Potential to transmit to different through vectors, right? If we talk about examples, so we'll have example number 1, which is PEGS, and that is JEV, Japanese encephalitis virus. So we are also talking about virus in this case, okay? Birds for West Nile virus. These are the two different amplifier hosts where viruses can get amplified. And then let's talk about another host, which is accidental host. A host in which which is not a part of parasite's normal life cycle. So it's not a part of the normal life cycle. And what will happen? Infection will happen by chance. So by chance, infection will happen. Example in this case, basically humans. And humans for what kind of parasite? Toxocara canis. Toxocara canis is the parasite. Now let's talk about next host, which is dead end host. Very easy to understand, right? Dead end means after that it cannot be transmitted further. So parasite survive. The point is parasite is going to survive if parasite enters into dead end host, but it's not going to get transmitted further, essentially terminating the life cycle of that particular parasite. So example, interestingly, humans for rabies virus. As I told you, we are also discussing viruses in this case. You have humans for Echinococcus. Echinococcus, if enters inside the humans, so that's the dead end host. We are not going to get transfer this particular parasite to any other host. Next is, so there will be carrier host, an individual who harbors the parasite without, basically it's carrying the parasite or harboring the parasite without showing any kind of clinical symptoms. So there will not be no clinical symptoms will be there, but it can still shed the virus or the parasite. It can still shed the parasite and transmit the infection. So shedding the parasite will happen, transmission of the infection will happen, but there will be no symptoms. So asymptomatic host, right? Okay, so what will happen in this case? Entamoeba histolytica. Entamoeba histolytica is a pathogenic parasite to humans, but sometimes humans, they can also become carrier host, like where no symptom is there. Those humans are called asymptomatic host or carrier host for this particular parasite. And there are a lot of examples for that. Natural host, another host is the natural host, the host in which the parasite normally lives and successfully completes its life cycle under natural condition. Very, very simple definition. Means a parasite which has its own host, normal host, natural host, and completes its life cycle. So that's the natural host. So it's going to complete the life cycle under normal condition. Humans, in case of Ascaris. Ascaris is a worm, Ascaris lumbricoides. So that's the worm where the parasite is going to naturally live inside the humans, right? So we have covered so many different types of hosts. So why don't we revise everything very, very quickly? So we'll start with definitive. I'll just tell you one word for each one so that you can remember. For definitive means sexual stage or sexual reproduction will be completed in this one. Intermediate means technically asexual reproduction will be completed in this host. Now, next is a reservoir host. Reservoir host is nothing but the host where the maintenance of the parasite will happen. Reservoir host. Next, you have Paratenic host. And if you remember, Paratenic host is for transport of the virus, right? It's also known as transport host. Next is Amplifier host, where the massive multiplication will happen. So multiplication of the virus will happen. Then you have accidental host. So wrong entry of the parasite into wrong host. Next is you have dead end host. Dead end. Very easy to understand. No further development or termination will happen. So termination is the correct word over here. Last is carrier host, where asymptomatic or carry the parasite only, no symptoms, without any symptoms. Includes our lecture or our class on different types of hosts. We have covered very, very important hosts. We have covered the example of these different hosts. So I want you to please go and revise whatever we have discussed, create your own notes, but this will cover most of the parasites and also their host in detail, right? So in this lecture, we have covered the host. In the previous one, we have covered the parasites. And please, these are really important topics, okay? We need to complete those topics and then move further into the course. So this course is on introduction to parasitology, where we will be touching base on all the important topics. And before I conclude, I want you to please visit Research Goal website, where I host multiple courses. The courses that are there on YouTube, they are free for all. And the course that are there on the Research Goal, highly professional courses that I've created to improve your research skills. Please go and visit. They are not very, very expensive. They are low cost, but you also get certified. You get certification from me. And if you complete those courses, then you'll get high-end advanced research skills that will help you in your research journey. Research is really, really important. You get to know a lot of important skills. You get to understand those skills. You get to have the hands-on experience on those skills. So this is really, really important. So please visit and see what are the courses that are available, and let me know if you have any doubts, any questions. I'll meet you in the next one, and let's complete the introduction to parasitology, and then we'll move further. I have also created some of the other courses. Please explore our Biology Goal website and also Research Goal website too. Thank you so much.